Welcome to This Explainer, everyone. I'm your co-host, and I'm here in the studio with my partner to unpack something incredibly fascinating today. Hey, everyone! We are so excited to dive into this with you. Today, we're exploring the astronomical alignments happening around August 26, 2026. It's essentially an invitation to observe the living sky, and by doing so, we can actually discover some pretty amazing connections to what's happening right inside our own bodies. We're getting into cosmogenesis and this absolutely beautiful concept known as the solar and lunar stitch. Right, so let's just jump right in.
To really get us started, I want to pose a central question for us to think about. How exactly do we cross a temporal seam? Now, if you're sitting there wondering what on earth a temporal seam is, think of it like that strange in-between space where an old chapter of your life has definitively ended, but the brand new one hasn't quite kicked off yet. Right now, the former rhythm of our collective lives, those cycles we've totally relied on, well, they've completed. We're standing right at a threshold.
Exactly. The new continuity has absolutely already begun, but the thing is, it's not arriving with some loud, dramatic crash. Instead, its instruction is currently pacing itself quietly, almost invisibly, directly into our nervous systems. We are inside a transitional seam right now, and learning how to cross it without completely losing our footing is exactly what this explainer is all about.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, the Exoligmos long arc.
To really wrap our heads around this biological moment we're in, we actually have to zoom way, way out before we can zoom in. We need to grasp the massive astronomical scales that are returning to our skies. When we track a 30-year eclipse pulse, mapping out the annual solar and lunar configurations, we see a distinct rhythm. Eclipses as a whole track along one path, while the underlying solar and lunar components have their own specific trajectories.
And what's wild is noticing how those solar and lunar components alternate in these huge, rhythmic, multi-decade pulses.
What absolutely blows my mind is that ancient civilizations, like the Babylonians, they actually mapped out these exact celestial pulses without any modern technology at all. They literally just looked up at the sky and tracked this massive cosmic clockwork, this deep, long-term breathing of our solar system. And it's that very rhythm that directly impacts the temporal seam we're navigating today.
Which brings us right to the actual mechanics of that clockwork, the 54-year Exoligmos cycle. I actually like to think of an Exoligmos as essentially the universe's astronomical return policy. Basically, it takes 3 18-year Saros cycles to bring a very specific celestial geometry back into our skies.
And when you trace the timeline of this, the sheer gravity of it really hits you. The origin point of this specific solar and lunar pairing we're looking at, that was back in 1972. It took its first 18-year turn in 1990, its second turn in 2008, and now, here in 2026, we are experiencing the Exoligmos return. Decades later, the exact geometric relationship of shadow and light from 1972 is coming back to our current sky.
But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway for all of us. As the concept goes, a structural instruction present in 1972 returns in 2026 to a different observer in a different world. The geometry returns, but the response does not have to repeat.
I just love that distinction so much. This massive astronomical return, it offers us orientation, not some kind of rigid, unavoidable prediction. We are not doomed to just repeat the history of 1972. The celestial architecture provides the framework, sure, but we have the absolute freedom to respond entirely differently this time around. You are a different observer now, and you're living in a completely different world.
And that perfectly transitions us into Section 2, the solar and lunar stitch.
So you might be wondering, how do these returning cosmic instructions actually impact us down here on the ground? Well, we can break this transfer mechanism down into 2 really distinct layers. First up is the solar layer. Think of this as the directional push. It provides the core structure, the invariant reference. Visualize this layer as bright, unyielding gold solar threads. It is pure, intense structural instruction.
But as we know, a thread needs something to actually weave into, right? And that is the lunar layer. While the sun provides that intense, unyielding direction, the moon governs the much softer pace, the readiness, and the actual physical embodiment. So contrast those bright gold threads with a rich, responsive blue lunar fabric. The lunar layer is what determines exactly how and when that heavy structural instruction can actually be sustained by living things.
So let's literally walk through how this stitch happens, step by step. Step 1 is the solar signal. That's the initial exposure of that gold thread, the brand new instruction. Step 2 is the lunar uptake. During the August 27th to 28th lunar eclipse, the moon acts just like that blue fabric, actively catching the solar instruction. Then comes Step 3, biological processing. And
And listen, this is exactly why this matters to you right now. This isn't just some abstract theory in the sky. This is actual biological metabolization happening right inside your body. The lunar field filters that highly intense solar signal into a pace that your nervous system can actually handle. And finally, step 4, lived expression. The solar thread gives us the direction, the lunar fabric provides the tension, but our day-to-day lived expression is what ultimately reveals whether the stitch will actually hold in our reality.
Which leads us to Section 3, a civilizational reset. Understanding that biological processing really transitions us from the distant astronomy of the sky right down to the intimate, messy biology of our collective human architecture. Because let's face it, when the sky shifts this dramatically, our collective systems absolutely must respond.
Exactly. A new continuity requires a nervous system capable of carrying it. We're talking about something branching like pale living dendrites to nourish, route, and transmit.
Branching like pale, living dendrites. Vascular repair. It's such a fascinating biological reality, isn't it? Civilizational upgrades require actual, physical, biological capacity. It's really not just about downloading faster information or suddenly coming up with better ideas. It's about cultivating a collective nervous system that can receive a massive signal, regulate it, and transmit it without completely breaking under the pressure. So to make this new signal truly usable, we have to shift our day-to-day operations. We've got to move away from merely collecting information and shift toward deep orientation.
Right, and we have to transition from just discussing architecture to actually grounding it in our daily practice. And perhaps most importantly, we absolutely need to abandon private prediction and step into conscious collective participation. For example, instead of just doom scrolling in private to guess what global disaster is coming next, we have to actively step into our local communities and participate in the repair. We aren't just surviving this new continuity, we are actively tasked with building it.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 4, Practical Collective Guidance. Let's bring all of this entirely into the lived bodily experience. As this lunar door closes, what is the actual, actionable framework for the days ahead? Well, we've broken this down into a really simple framework for you. On the support side, focus on steady hydration, deliberate rest, gentle movement, and keeping observation logs. Honestly, just track your body and your environment. Yes, and equally important is what we must reduce. You need to drop the false urgency of forced acceleration. Reduce overcommitment. Please do not reopen completed structures just because this new temporal rhythm feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Don't make permanent life-altering decisions right now simply to escape the temporary pressure of this threshold. You have to slow down. I really mean it, just slow down. Take this as a cosmic invitation to give yourself some grace.
Instead of forcing action, try to deeply observe your somatic responses. Ask yourself, what actually remains when all your effort is withdrawn? What repeatedly asks to be completed in your life? And what does your body readily accept that your mind is still sitting there anxiously debating?
That is so key because true clarity in these massive cosmic moments, it rarely ever arrives during the absolute peak of the eclipse's intensity. It arrives in the quiet that follows, after the pressure finally passes. Ask yourself which signals produce regulation and calm in your body, rather than just greater intensity. Because that feeling of regulation, that is exactly where the new continuity lives.
And that brings us to a beautiful closing thought. Let the lunar field determine what crosses. The new continuity begins with what can remain alive after the pressure to continue has been removed. The bright gold threads have been woven into the rich blue fabric. The sky has delivered the instruction, and the temporal door is closing. So the only question left for us to ponder is this. When the pressure finally lifts, what will you choose to keep alive?